apart from meeting him in the first place and no longer being able to be a peacekeeper, that's probably the other milestone. You want to be taking risks. That's when you really fly as an artist or as a creator of something, and as filmmakers. So we always had to sort of simplify our choices on those occasions, because for self-preservation, but mostly for the sake of the story, because that's all you have. So you have to simplify your choices, which at other times I may have taken greater risks as an actor. For example, the episode that Ben wrote in season 4, the episode where I played the blonde princess. I could take risks there because it was a comedy piece, which had to be layered with something a bit more subversive and sinister. But at the same time, I could basically do whatever I wanted because I was playing a new character completely from scratch. And Tony and Ben just said, okay, do the scenes as they're written, and then once we get into the fight scene, just go crazy and improvise. And that was probably the largest sort of bulk of improvisation that I've experienced doing on the show. Ben improvised a fair bit with sort of cultural references, and that was often a timely matter, because if something had just happened in the news, he would reference it that day in the script on the set as it happened. So we would improvise in those ways. Ben and I made a decision that we wanted to pull out and expand on as many romantic elements of the storytelling on Farscape as possible. So one of the episodes that he wrote, Green-Eyed Monster, is an example. He chose to do the story primarily about Aaron in the center of in the corner of the triangle, the love triangle. So there were a lot of elements that used to come into the storytelling about love triangles, sometimes unrequited love. That was a major theme with Grace and Aaron. The man who sort of basically deems her irreversibly contaminated witnesses in the flashback of the way we weren't, as we learn that she'd basically, we say dobbed in Australia. That means turned in, or what's another expression for dobbed in? Basically ratted on her lover to get promoted. Back to Prowler detail. So Erin learnt the hard way about love in that situation. She was frightened of it. So when she meets Crichton, she has a lot to learn about what it can do and how it can change her life. And then when he dies, it almost destroys her, and she goes back to being what she knows, which is a cold, hard peacekeeper, because it's the way they've always been trained. So it's a really interesting, thematically, the concept of love in the story is fascinating, because it's about a woman who's been told she's not allowed to. And then despite herself and despite everything, she cannot help but fall for this man who softens her and teaches her how to actually love properly, if there is a proper way to love. And then, the themes with Dargo and Shiana and everything comes at a cost. That's the other thing about love on Farscape. There's always a price to pay, and you always have to make a choice between one person or another, and you choose one person and the other person will die, or they'll be heartbroken, or there'll be some intergalactical disaster of, the proportions and the scales were always huge on the show. So, yeah, love was always at the center of a very dynamic story. The decision to clone Crichton was a brilliant one, because it meant the producers and the audience, in a way, could have their cake and eat it too. The cake for the audience was to see, finally, Crichton and Aaron together. Eating it too, from the producer's perspective, was that they could then separate us again in quite a substantial way and reset the clock, because each season it followed a pretty, repetitive shape. Girl meets boy. They like each other, they can't be together, they finally get a chance to be together and something pulls them apart, and each season this would happen in new ways, and we were constantly looking for new ways, and death was certainly a bit of a way to separate them for a while. One thing that David Kemper said at the beginning of the show was he didn't want us to be, the aliens in the Farscape world, to be so superhuman that things didn't hurt, emotionally and physically. If you got hit, you had to get some kind of bruise or a scar or blood somewhere. If you got shot, it was supposed to hurt instead of, unlike the Scarans, who became almost unbeatable. And that's to do with the stakes and the consequences in the universe, and I think it gives it a more human and realistic element. And Crichton's death, so when people do die, Often in science fiction, obviously, it's a thing, it's a part of the nature of the genre. People can be exhumed, they can come back. There's wonderful things that happen out in that crazy alien universe that can make people spring to life again. But at the center of that, the Crichton that Erin falls in love with will never come back. He's a man that she fell completely in love with, and although she likes the other Crichton because they really are the same person, she hasn't shared that same level of development with him. So she has to sort of get to know him all over again, and concede again to love after losing both her mother twice, or 3 times in her life, but twice in season 3, and Crichton. Zan dying, that came at a huge price for Erin, because Zan had made the choice to give up her life for Erin and for Erin and John, and it goes against everything that Erin's been trained to believe in. She has to sort of keep a distance from people because they get hurt if you're not concentrating on the task at hand. So death was always, in our universe, was always something that had to matter and it had to count. Otherwise, the characters stood for nothing and we would cease to care about them and what happened to them. Farscape was also meant to me creatively that the sky's the limit, that I should just keep aiming for more and better and, to go harder, to go hard with my work, to take greater risks, to trust people. I've met the continuity of working with some of the same directors and actors has meant that it's been easier to trust other people with my work as well, and that is a big lesson for actors because it's disempowering, really. You do the work and it's out of your hands once it's in the can. It's somebody else's work. So we were very well looked after. So Farscape's been an incredible opportunity, the best character I think in a long time to play, and a lot of fun and a lot of hard work, and an experience of a lifetime.